Testing. Hi, Crystal. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
We'll give some time for folks to shuffle in here. Phyllis, hello. If I'm pronouncing
Hello,
your
good
name,
afternoon.
hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yeah, you got it right.
Good. Hi, Medley. So for the folks that's joining in, I posted a link in the chat to the question board. I will. By the way, Will, you just joined here a second ago. If you could do me a favor and open the chat in Zoom, do you see the comment I posted there at 3 o'clock?
No, I don't see anything in the chat right now.
You don't? Okay, yeah. As I suspected.
Oh, now I see a couple things.
Yeah, I just threw that in there. So it doesn't, still haven't had a chance to figure that out. So if you join, you don't see the chat history of anything that was posted before you joined.
Hmm.
So I have to kind of keep posting stuff up as people join. Danu Sujan, hello.
Hi, Eric.
So I see some new faces here. Let's give some folks a chance to kind of trickle in. But there's a link to the question board. Feel free to jump in there, post any questions, upvote any questions that you feel are relevant to you, and then we'll get going here in a minute. I see a lot of new names here. Is everyone here joining from the NSA?
Yeah, that's how I found out
Okay.
about this and signed up.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, we'll let folks come in as they may. Um, so basically, I do this once a week. I've been part of the NSA now for 9 months as a moderator, moderating two JSCs, 413 and 476. Uh, Virtually everybody's kind of moved on at this point in terms of finding their opportunities. But one thing that I've discovered is that in this market right now, it's hard for a lot of folks to connect with a recruiter. And this is just my way of trying to give back. I've found that a lot of um, folks could really benefit from a little bit of information at the right place, right time when it comes to understanding sort of the recruiter mindset, how recruiting works, and just to be better equipped to navigating that whole process. So so again, I do this once a week, largely unstructured, but you can post up questions on the question board, which I will post once again in the um, chat box here. And then we just do AMA style. We try to make it interactive. If you're not shy, jump in and let me see your beautiful faces. Um, we try to make it interactive. And some of the feedback that I've also received is that some folks would feel like they would benefit from a little bit more structure in terms of the questions. I've been sort of teetering on that because I feel like people really learn when the question comes from them, right? Versus me just sort of shoving stuff down your mouth. So, um, anyway, I'm still trying to find that balance there. But I do have two things I did want to talk about and touch on. And if you have more questions around that, we can go into that as well. Um, I hear a bunch of folks trickling in here. Check out the chat. I just posted the link to the job board, the question board. So, upvote or add any questions there that you think are relevant, and then we'll sort of go through them. Um, so one before we get started here, I wanted to talk a little bit about two things. Um, and maybe I can share my screen with you guys here. It's something that I came up with that I thought might be interesting for folks, and I'd love to hear your guys' feedback. But a lot of what I'll provide here and what I've been providing here for the past 3 months that I've been doing this is really the recruiter's perspective, right? If you can make the job easier for the recruiter, they could be a better advocate on your behalf, right? And so one of the things that I've, commonly given perspective on is just, how a recruiter looks at a resume, right? And I'm coaching an executive right now, and one thing that I came up with that I found to be helpful for me, and if it's helpful for me as a recruiter, it could be helpful for other recruiters out there. But let me share my screen here real quick. Um, so everybody talks about quantifying accomplishments and making them easy to access um, on your resume and your LinkedIn profile. But one of the things that I came up with, and let me just start from the top here. So here's an example of, five bullet points of some, what I believe to be pretty quantified and pretty tight accomplishments, pretty precise. But that's not so much what I wanted to talk about here or touch on. What I did want to talk about here is this idea of putting sort of a header or a preview for each bullet, right? Because when you're looking at, let's say, 4 or 5 bullets, which is not, it was pretty typical to see this and for me to see this on a resume. I'm not quite sure, I have to read the whole thing to really understand sort of how to group the accomplishment. So one thing that I came up with using ChatGPT was asking ChatGPT to basically create a sort of a preview or a label for each of these bullets. And this is what it came up with. And so for me as a recruiter, somebody reading this resume, it really helps me wrap my mind around sort of how this is relevant, right? So financial turnaround, asset growth, fundraising success, strategic funding and contracts, business growth and so on. And then I can go ahead and look at the accomplishment and get more details. I don't see people doing this, but I tell you what, as a recruiter reading a resume that's reading a lot of resumes and reading a lot of bullet points on accomplishments, this is super helpful for me. So
Eric, I'm sorry, can I just interrupt? Are
yeah,
you
sure.
suggesting that this, just the same way that we do our summary up top? Are you
Um,
suggesting that we also have kind of like a preview up top? Or is this accomplishment within each of the respective like jobs that you've held?
yeah. So
Where are you situating this
yeah.
within the resume?
Yeah, great question, Yolanda. So I've always been a big advocate of having your candidate market fit statement or objective statement at the top, having it being super concise, and then also at the top of your resume, a section for sort of your career accomplishments, which are sort of a selection of, you know, 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 accomplishments that are hyper relevant to the job that you're applying for. And to answer your question, yes, I'm suggesting that you put this preview up there.
Okay.
And I'm also suggesting that it would add value. Again, I'm offering you the perspective of a recruiter because if I were to see this, these little previews in a sea of accomplishments, just a whole list of accomplishments, it would be so much easier for me to consume, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a bit novel. I don't see people doing this, right? And so again, there's a million ways to do a resume. I come from it from a perspective of what makes the job easier on me as a recruiter or a hiring manager that's consuming a bunch of resumes, right? I want to get to the truth I want to get to the specifics, the concrete. I don't want to see a bunch of fluff. I don't want to see a bunch of superlatives, right? Because it just adds noise, clutter that I need to sort of work my way around to get to the truth, right? To get to the concrete stuff. And so, again, I don't profess to be an expert resume writer. There's, I'm not a resume writer. I'm not a professional resume writer, but I'm a professional resume reader, right? And so this is something that I came up with that I thought would be really handy for me as a reader. Um, so anyway, just a thought, just something that you guys can consider. It's really easy to do this, obviously, with ChatGPT because ChatGPT is awesome at consuming a bunch of information and summarizing it, right? So anyway, just a thought. The other thing I wanted to touch on is, how you can help your recruiter, right? Um, and to give you guys a sense of how recruiters operate, when they're interviewing you, more often than not, they're taking notes, right? And so once they get out of the interview with you, they have a set of notes. And what they typically do is they'll create sort of a case for you as a candidate. And to the extent that you can make their job easier in terms of making a case for you, they could be a stronger advocate and champion for you throughout the process. So one thing, this is sort of shorthand that I use when I'm interviewing someone and taking notes. And this may be a little bit old school because nowadays, you can record your interview, and you can sort of interrogate the recording or the transcription for whatever you want out of it. But this is sort of shorthand that I've always used, but it's a nice framework for thinking about how you can convey um, your value proposition to a recruiter or interviewer, right? It doesn't have to be a recruiter. So one is the shorthand is the plus, the minus, the star, and the question mark. And the star is questions, qualifications, skills. The minus are gaps, misalignments, inadequate skills or experience. The star is what's unique or special about this candidate. And the question mark is, what needs to be explored further, right? And so one thing I would recommend is after you get off of an interview, or even before you get off of an interview, if you could suggest to your recruiter that, hey, I can provide you a quick summary of what I feel like I bring to the table, and you could send them a follow-up email sort of outlining some of these areas. And it doesn't have to be long. In fact, I would make it short, concise, and that could really help them. It'll help provide them with a shortcut to, creating what we call a candidate submission. So if I find that a candidate is strong and they're a good fit, I'm going to spend some time writing up what I call a submission or a write-up that either goes into the ATS system or gets shot off to the hiring manager as part of an email, basically advocating for this candidate. And so if you can help inform that or help augment or reinforce um, their notes as part of that process, that could be really helpful for a recruiter. So again, I'm coming to this with the mindset of, what help do I need as a recruiter to make my job easier? Because if you can do that, you'll set yourself apart from all the other folks that are not thinking in that way and not doing these kinds of things, right? And so those are two things that I wanted to touch on. But I guess any questions or thoughts? Would love any feedback before we jump into the Q&A questions.
That's super helpful.
Yeah, okay. Well, cool. All right, let's see. Let me make sure that my view here is okay. I only see four of us here. Usually I get there's a bunch of folks on the call here, like 16 folks, but I only see a few faces. I don't know if it's a setting on my end or what. Okay, anyway, let's see. So I see questions on the question board. Hey, Darlene. Part of the reason I do this is to connect with folks. So I'd love to see your faces if you feel it's not too distracting or if you're not in a terrible position to enable your video. All right, cool. So hi Jen. All right, let's see. Would you pay for career coaching services, help with branding, etc., i.e., someone with 10 plus years of HR business process, I guess, recruiting experience. Um, would I pay for career coaching? Um, yeah, there's a lot of coaches out there, right? And they're all offering something different. Um, if I think first and foremost, I would try to lean on sort of the Never Search Alone group. Um, and if you are considering a coach, I would make sure that they're credible and there's sort of a chemistry there in terms of them being able to provide you with insight and really getting to know you and so forth, right? I haven't spent a lot of time sort of sifting through coaches, so I wish I could provide more advice there. But um, yeah, and just because somebody has 10 plus years of experience doesn't necessarily mean that they're entirely credible either. So, that's a bit of a search that you'd have to do as well. Also, if you like anything, if you get referrals or recommendations from folks that you trust, that could be valuable as well. But um, yeah. How do you recommend candidates find and connect with relevant recruiters for their field, i.e., UX research, who are actually interested and able to help? Tend to listening to it. Yeah, this is tough. This is sort of the premise of why I kind of do this week on a week to week basis because it's hard to get in touch with recruiters right now. A lot of recruiters are overworked. A lot of their teams are understaffed. A lot of companies have slimmed down their recruiting force, and so you have recruiters that are doing the work of multiple recruiters. A lot of recruiters are just inundated with inbound. There's abundance of great talent out there. So one of the big challenges is sifting through the noise. And so in terms of connecting with relevant recruiters, and I've said this several times before, I would start with LinkedIn. I would start with trying to find recruiters that are geographically relevant to you as far as industry, seniority, and so forth. And then try to engage with them either through connecting with um, their content, engaging with their content, and things like that. And then reach out to them and seeing how you can connect with them. Um, part of what recruiters are interested in, particularly third party recruiters, these are recruiters that work for an agency that services any number of different clients. Is most of these recruiters are interested in their ability to connect with great talent. And so if you can give them something like that, or give them a platform to access something like that, that would pique their interest. If they're more senior and they're what they call full desk, meaning they're soliciting clients as well as filling the positions, then they would be very interested as well as a platform for connecting with potential new client leads. One thing that might be helpful, there's this concept called most placeable candidate, and it's a business development sort of tactic for recruiters, for full desk recruiters. And basically, what they do is they try to connect with candidates that are most placeable, right? Like they have really specialized or really, they're the 1 percentile in terms of talent, right? And they'll partner with that candidate and ask them, hey, would you mind if I use your background to sort of break down the walls so I can get into, a, a company? And the benefit for the candidate is, they're not going to leave unless the opportunity is better than what they already have, right? And so that's sort of the promise. And so recruiters will take this candidate and then go to different companies and say, hey, I have this awesome candidate that you should look at. And a lot of times, recruiters, if they do it well, they can sort of break down the barriers and engage a hiring manager or hiring authority using that approach. So from a candidate's perspective, that could be a way to partner with a recruiter. Um, I mean, obviously, you have to be sort of at the top of your game, and you have to sort of distinguish yourself from the pack, whether you're a software engineer or designer, or product manager, what have you, right? You have to be placeable. You have to be a strong placeable candidate for that tactic to be relevant. So something to think about. Um, is it worth cold applying to jobs once they've been posted for 2+ weeks? Yeah. So just to describe kind of what happens behind the scenes, jobs get posted oftentimes by a recruiter or an HR person on various job boards, and then what ends up happening is folks start applying. So time is of the essence. The faster that you can apply, the faster you're going to get that attention. Once once a job gets a certain number of applicants, uh, usually the recruiter or the hiring manager, they're forming cohorts and they're picking among the folks that initially come inbound. And that, I don't know what that number is. It really depends. It could be 10 people, it could be 50, it could be 100, it could be 200. But at some point, they're starting to go through the inbound, and they're starting to say, okay, I want to talk to this person, this person, this person. Once they've formed that cohort, more often than not, the pipeline will kind of stall until they sort of move those folks through the process. And not to say that it's not worth applying anymore, because what's the cost of applying? It's fairly cheap, right? I mean, you hit one or two buttons and you can apply. Um, the flip side to that is I wouldn't recommend just applying everywhere, because it can be demoralizing the more you see, rejection emails. So there is a cost to just applying everywhere. I would still be focused about applying, but I would say time is of the essence when something gets posted. Let's see. Is applying to a job posting on LinkedIn without a network contact at the company worth the effort? Yeah, similarly, right? Like, I mean, what is the cost of applying? It's pretty low. But the cost of building a relationship, going through the back door, it's more costly, but it's also sort of more effective. I think you got to take a multi-pronged approach. You can't just rely on one. Is it necessary to add your job search time frame on your resume? It feels like that I'm opening myself to being rejected faster. So right now, the market is such, and maybe a lot of you are seeing this, particularly in tech. Um, you know, being out of a job, it's for 3 months, 6 months, even 9 months it's not entirely uncommon right now. It's pretty common. Um, so obviously, if you've been out for some time, your resume will probably reflect that. And what I would recommend is doing stuff to build confidence. So if you can engage yourself on um, relevant projects, it could be pro bono, right? And you can put that on your resume as long as you can talk about it, as long as you can talk effectively about it. That would, for me as a recruiter, reading that resume or talking to that person, it would sort of differentiate that person. I know that searching for a job is a full-time job. Um, but if you can make time to uh, put some energy into, passion projects, side hustles, and it's something that you're excited about and passionate about, and you can showcase that on your resume, and eventually, somebody will, recruiter or an interview will ask you about it. Chances are, if it's a passion project or something that you're excited about, when you start talking about that, that energy will come through, right? And what I see a lot of is, if you're talking about something that you're excited about, that energy and that passion comes through, and it makes for a better conversation, makes for a better interview, versus if you're, sort of tail between your legs, and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I've been out of a job for 6 months, and that energy comes through as well, right? So that would be sort of a suggestion that I would make. Is yeah, compartmentalize your time, and put some energy beyond the job search and into something that you're passionate about. What's the best sales pitch to cold call an executive recruiter? So the thought is that, I think the question here is, how do you get an executive recruiter to work with you, or any recruiter for that matter? Going back to my point earlier about being sort of a strong placeable candidate. I mean, first of all, you have to connect with the recruiter that that you are relevant to, right? there are all kinds of recruiters out there, and oftentimes they specialize based on industry, based on role, based on seniority, based on region, right? Um, and so you want to make sure that you're sort of trying to connect with the right kind of recruiter. But then you also have to be placeable, right? You have to be at the top of your game. You have to be somebody that is that a recruiter could quite easily put you in front of a client, put you in front of a client, and with limited hesitation, right? And so to the extent that you can make their job easier, to the extent that you can differentiate yourself from the pack, um, uh, that would probably be the best way to sort of pitch yourself to an executive, to a recruiter. Again, you also have to look at the kind of recruiter you're sort of looking at. You want to work with a third party recruiter typically because they have more visibility across, sort of a broader swath of companies. Internal recruiters are, they have more of an allegiance to the company that they're working with, right? Or the company that employs them, right? So that's the difference between an internal recruiter and external recruiter. Um, let's see. If I don't have any recruiter contacts, how do I get in touch with someone from my listening tour? Yeah, that's sort of similar to what I was saying earlier. Is you have to network with these recruiters. I'd start with LinkedIn again, engaging with their content, giving them something that would be sort of valuable to them. Let's see. Hold on. Let me just look at the chat here. Okay. Has the easy apply button broken the application process? I feel like it floods the ATS with resumes because it's so easy to casually apply, making it ever more important to reach out on LinkedIn. Yeah, I mean that's a problem that we've been talking about here for a second for earlier. The easy apply button has made it really easy for people to apply, even when people are not the right fit, and it's conditioning recruiters to be a little bit more jaded about their inbound, and so they're struggling, right? Especially they're a lot of them are understaffed too, and so they're managing multiple pipelines or multiple job requisitions with a large number of applicants. So I'm not saying don't go through the front door with an application, but uh, you should, and it's pretty easy to do that nowadays. But you also have to do the work in terms of networking. So um,
Hey,
I've
Eric,
been
about that.
yeah. Who's
Um,
that?
this is Mark.
Hey, Mark.
I posted that question. Thank you for the response and thank you for doing all of this.
Yeah, sure.
Just wanted to hone in on what you said about making them jaded about their pipeline.
Yeah,
The recruiters. I mean, so what I'd like to know, if you have any insight, is how can what might we do in the application process to lessen that jadedness? To kind of that seems like there might be some opportunity there where even a slight modification in my process
yeah,
might make me stand out a little more by being
yeah,
less
yeah,
jading, I guess, is kind
yeah.
of
There's two things that I'd recommend that are at least top of mind right now is, and I'm not sure, Mark, if you were here at the beginning of the call, but um, little things that make the recruiter or the reader of your resume, little things like that can make it easier for them, uh, would be appreciated because a lot of people don't do those things. So, for example, in your accomplishments, so I'm just kind of mentioning what I mentioned earlier. You could put a little header, right, that sort of summarizes what the accomplishment's about. Really easy to do with ChatGPT, right? And so that's something that I haven't seen done before, but it would make my life as a recruiter easier. Somebody that's consuming a lot of resumes. The other thing, and I've mentioned this before, is and people don't do this, but putting a QR code on your resume that links to a video of you introducing yourself, right? Putting sort of not just a face, but like a face, a voice, an energy to your resume. You're sort of hacking the process, right? Because most recruiters, most interviewers, they're not going to see that until they schedule time with you. So you're giving them a shortcut, and you're actually hijacking the whole process, inviting them into a process that you now can control and you can track, right? And people don't do it because a lot of people are shy to be on video, which I can't blame them, right? A lot of people like that. But if you're willing to do that, that's an example of something that would set you apart, right? Because I don't see people do that. And if I'm looking at a resume, I'm looking at resumes all day through my ATS system, and I'm like, oh, what is this QR code on this person's resume? 99% of the time, I want to take my phone and be like, click, what is this? Right? And now you have their attention, and now you have sort of a captive audience to kind
I
of,
see.
you know, again, I'm sharing with you things that I don't see people do, right?
Hmm.
They're non-conventional, but in the spirit of helping the recruiter, in the spirit of making their job easier, in the spirit of sort of distinguishing yourself from what is conventional, right? I think there may be it's maybe worth considering.
Okay. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah. Let's see. We're at the bottom of the hour here. I could probably just do a few more. I've been a part of the JSC for a few months, and I don't feel it's been helpful. I need a job ASAP. Any advice to get me in a better JSC or getting a job more quickly? I have a job coach, resume link, problem networking. Okay. The JSC and sort of the assignment, it's all volunteer based, and I'm not, I'm not formally like, other than being a moderator, I'm not like formally part of the JS. I'm not formally part of the, I guess it's all volunteer based anyway, but to the extent that I've been involved is as a moderator, right? So I think one thing I would suggest is if you're not feeling your JSC, you can move, right? Um, I forget her name. I think her name is Emily, but you can reach out to her and find her on your emails from the NSA, and just request that you be considered for another JSC, right? It's okay, right? Um, I don't think you're gonna hurt anybody's feelings, and you got to do what's right for yourself, right? What you don't want to have happen is like you don't feel like the JSC is a good fit, and you're just kind of half-assing it, because then that brings everybody down, right? You want to be in the right JSC where there's just a good fit, there's a good vibe. Obviously, things go up and down emotionally and with respect to morale, but um, and again, I don't know what your entire situation is. Like I don't know how long you've been in the JSC, but you do have to give it a chance, right? Because sometimes there's this storming and forming um, phase that all teams and all groups go through, and you might just be caught up in part of that. So, but if you have determined, definitively that it's best that you move because it's not the right fit, then I would suggest doing that sooner rather than later. Um, in terms of getting a job more quickly, I mean, yeah, again, I don't know what your situation is, but if there's opportunities I mean, there's several options, right? You could try to take something that is, just there to kind of make ends meet, and that's understandable. Um, but uh, but if you go through the process, I mean, the objective of the whole NSA approach is to, find the right fit for you. It's the approach is also oriented towards making the best use out of your time, and so you might want to give it a chance. Um, if you need to get a job quickly, you may have to sort of lower your standards a little bit, or sort of broaden your options, just to get a paycheck. And that's totally understandable as well. If you have a job coach, I mean, lean on him or her to kind of, really press them to kind of squeeze out as much information and guidance as you can. And similarly to the JSC, you got to make sure it's the right fit. So hope that helps. Is it okay to get a referral for a role with a bit of time after you've applied for a role? Uh, I'm not sure I understand this question. Is it so after you applied, is it okay to get to try to leverage an internal contact as a referral? I don't see why not. I mean, ideally you do that before you apply. Sometimes, companies incentivize their employees to make referrals, through referral bonuses. And if you already applied, then that referral bonus might not be, they might not qualify for that referral bonus. So the other thing too that I'll mention is if you're working with a recruiter or you're trying to work with a recruiter in regards to a specific company, before you apply, I would try to get the recruiter to get your resume in the door first. And I'm referring to third-party recruiters. Because if they already have a relationship and they have an account with that client, by you applying first, you're basically disqualifying them from any commission. Because the company will have claim at that point. So if you apply to a company as a candidate or a job seeker, that company now owns the claim to you as a candidate. So the reason that companies pay third-party recruiters is for them to build pipeline of vetted, qualified candidates, right? That's what they're paid for. Now, if you apply for a company XYZ, that third-party recruiter that's working with company XYZ, they cannot submit you and state claim to you as a candidate. They can't advocate on your behalf. I mean, they can advocate on your behalf, but practically speaking, they're not really going to do that, right? Because they're not incentivized to. So if you're ever in a situation where a recruiter reaches out to you and says, "Hey, I have this awesome opportunity at XYZ company. Are you interested?" And maybe they'll email you, right? And then you're like, "Oh, XYZ company, I'm going to go to their website, do some research. That's great. Oh, I'm going to apply." At that point, when you apply, before you talk to the person, the recruiter, the external recruiter, they can no longer, more often than not, they can no longer get claimed to you. So yeah. So if somebody reaches out to you about XYZ company, talk to them first before applying, because you might disqualify them from any claim to you as a candidate. Okay. I think that's about all I have now. I mean, there's a bunch of questions here, and we'll sort of pick up where we left off next week. And I guess any other last questions that might be burning from the group here? All right, awesome. I'm gonna send I record these, I put these on YouTube. And if you guys have any questions, I send out an email, just sort of a reminder and stuff. I do have a survey that I'd love for you guys to take. It's a brief survey. It's really just about feedback so I can improve these sessions for everyone. And I'll send that out as part of the sort of the follow-up email. But anyway, thank you guys for joining, and hope to see you next week.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye-bye. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.